Acts 17, verse 16. Now, while Paul was waiting for them at Athens, his spirit was being provoked within him as he was beholding the city full of idols. So he was reasoning in the synagogue with the Jews and the God-fearing Gentiles, and in the marketplace every day with those who happened to be present. And also some of the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers were conversing with him. Some were saying, "What would this idle babbler wish to say?" Others, "He seems to be a proclaimer of strange deities, because he was preaching Jesus and the resurrection." And they took him and brought him to the Areopagus, saying, "May we know what this new teaching is which you are proclaiming. For you are bringing some strange things to our ears. We want to know, therefore, what these things mean." Now all the Athenians and the strangers visiting there used to spend their time in nothing other than telling or hearing something new. And Paul stood in the midst of the Areopagus and said, "Men of Athens, I observe that you are very religious in all respects. For while I was passing through and examining the objects of your worship, I also found an altar with this inscription, 'To an unknown God. What therefore you worship in ignorance, this I proclaim to you.'" We're going to stop there. Okay? I doubt we'll even get any that far again on this. All right, so as a reminder for last week, we had talked about Paul was waiting in Athens after being, what's the word I'm looking for, ushered off, assisted to run from that other place. And he was in Athens and really just observed, and we talked last week about the idols and stuff, and really, honestly, we only talked a little bit about idols. We didn't talk about idols of other things that we in America have. All right, Acts 17, verses 16 is where we're at. So anyway, I was just doing a recap of what we were talking about last week. And there were other kinds of idols, right, that we have. Idol of money, idol of self, idol of sports figures, other kinds of things. So it's more than just the idols that they were talking about here. And got into 17, and we started talking about, and he was reasoning in the synagogue with the Jews and the Gentiles, the God-fearing Gentiles. And then we get into 18, and it says, "And some of the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers were conversing with him." All right, so Epicurean, these are two words, and Stoic, that we don't use in everyday words and languages. So what is an Epicurean?
That, believe it or not, is the one thing I remember in all of my high school education.
Really?
Was the Epicureans. I don't remember the Stoics were. Epicureans was eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. That was their philosophy.
It's all about happiness.
Happiness and self fulfillment. That's where we were.
Where the philosophy was to desire to find the meaning of happiness. Where do you get happy at? Now, it wasn't kind of belief of orgies all day long, not that kind of a thing. But it was a seek for a happiness, and they really came down to kind of three basic things. The primary one is about having friends. That's I think the second one. I forget what the first one was. Is that you find happiness in friends. You don't find happiness in marriage or in any kind of one-on-one connection, but rather in a group of friends. And the other one was to quit your job that you work for and rather just do things that help you survive and exist. Okay? So they were known for basically wearing hardly any clothes. I mean, just like 2 garments, that's all they had. And live off the land and just don't let the burden of work, be your life. There is a now about that, yeah.
They were hippies.
They were hippies.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, man.
They were.
Yeah, about the it was about happiness. Yeah,
Chill, man.
but it was a very popular belief. When I was doing some background on it, in the Mediterranean area, there were well over 400,000 Epicureans communities. throughout the whole area there. So much so.
During this time? Or
During
later?
this, during this time, and before and after this time, because Epicurus was the original philosopher that started all that. A majority or a good portion of those cities or those towns ultimately got converted over to the Catholic monasteries. That's where a majority of the monasteries had come from.
Oh, really?
It's from them. It's kind
I
of
wonder if that
interesting
was-
thing. Because it was
They evolved into
it was
and
this
taken over.
thing about self-inflection and learning to be
Oh, I
happy and reduce and get rid of things in life. So that's all that kind of
Oh,
thing.
okay.
Okay, so that's the Epicurean philosophy that Paul was facing with here. So what do I do to make myself happy? And then the Stoics. So what's a Stoic?
Stoics, they believe that virtue is the highest good. You should live like a good, rational life in harmony with nature.
That's right. That's right. That happiness or sadness are irrelevant. That makes nothing about it. It is just what it is. It's about pursuing a virtue, whatever that virtue may be. That's where you should exist in, so that nothing bothers you really. And you hear, oh, that person was very stoic, in his loss.
So you take the good with the bad.
That's exactly right.
You just live your life to the highest you can, and then whatever comes
Right.
along is.
So it's not a particular virtue necessarily, just being virtuous.
Virtuous on something, right? And it was usually about what was it? Being virtuous of being true to yourself. That
But
was
it's
virtue.
it's not like the virtue of patience. It's not like the
No.
guy focused everything on being the patient or whatever.
No. It was the fact of pursuing a virtue, a single one, and just following with that. So very well. Anyways, so those are the Stoics. So really, kind of a wide swath of philosophy
Yeah.
that was going on here, and very humanistic.
I wonder if they kind of consider these I don't know if the yin and yang is the right word, but the opposites.
Sounds like.
Yeah, it does
it's
sound
like
like
the
it.
alpha, the omega type of thing. It's one end to the other.
Yeah, I think both camps, if you will, coming in, or both extremes of thought here. Very, very humanistic. The Stoics also, by the way, came from more of the philosophy of the Hellenistics. So you get kind of that background there too. It's kind of an overlay of things there. Okay, so he was reasoning, this is 17, he was reasoning in the synagogue, 18, sorry. And also some of the Epicureans and philosophers were conversing with him. And some were saying, now who's the some? Be the Epicureans or the Stoics, right, that were there. Some were saying, what would this idle babbler wish to say? And others, he seems to be proclaimer of strange deities. So we're about to talk about Aropicus, or however you say that. I'm probably butchering Aropicus thing here. I did look it up to see what it was, and there's actually still pictures today of this place where nothing but a big rock. Everything seems to be a big rock.
Yeah.
You about to say something? Okay. You had that face too. Where they would, have these talks all day long. And apparently, it was not allowed or illegal, or it was illegal to talk about strange gods. Only could talk about the ones that were known.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so one commentator mentioned that so Paul might have actually been not just testifying or reasoning, but was actually testifying in court. That he was making his defense of what he was saying. So it was more than just let's just sit down and have a casual conversation, but it was more like,
Preliminary hearing.
you better give an answer to what you're doing, because otherwise you're going to jail. That kind of...
Is it illegal on the grand scale, or just kind of rules of the court of that rock, the rules of the rock?
Well, the way the commentator stated, it was more of just like a magistrate level. It wasn't like a felony
Right, but my point was, it wasn't like the rules of the debate stage. It
No,
was-
no, it was a
real law, so
legal,
to
legal
speak.
law type of
Oh,
thing,
okay.
yeah. Which I find an interesting way of looking at Paul's response here is that was he really just conversing because he is known to do that, right? Walk up to somebody and, just have a conversation, as opposed to he's done with the other Jewish leaders, where he has made a strong defense
Good.
type of thing here.
Well, that could be the reason for verse 19.
Yep. And they took him and brought him to the Areopagus and saying, may we know what this new teaching is which you are proclaiming, right? In other words, justify what you're saying. Explain that.
You think he would agree to comply?
I think so. It's one of those,
Oh, that's what you want me to do?
I'd be happy to answer you. Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah. That kind of thing, yeah. Now, to me, when I look at this, it's kind of strange because that's not what we do today. I mean, rare do we get into a group of people and have these kind of conversations.
It's usually unproductive.
Yeah.
To be argumentative is unproductive, is what I'm saying.
Right. I work oftentimes on my laptop at Starbucks. It's just a place that I just do my own little thing. But I do have the opportunity to hear all the conversations that are going on in there. And it's interesting to hear all the different philosophies and things of life going on that goes on. There's one particular Bible study group that meets there every so often that it's supposed to be a Bible study group, but I think and I'm not trying to critique them at all, they would have their Bibles open, they'd say something like, we're going to be in James today or whatever, and then they start this conversation that goes on for 30, 40 minutes that has nothing to do with the Bible, but it's just personal belief. Well, I believe this, well, my experience has been this, well, this has been that, and they never get back to God's Word. To me, that's that idle talk.
Yeah, the God's word is just a conversation starter.
Yeah,
and you just go off
exactly.
from there.
Yeah, exactly. Here.
I like that cut down though. They call him an idle babbler. 1 Corinthians 4, 10, 11, or 9 and 10 says, like men sentenced to death, we have become a spectacle to the world, to angels and to men. We are fools for Christ's sake. And that's exactly what it's like here.
Yeah.
And then that babbler word, I was reading that comes from the word for, direct translation would be like seed collector, like they're painting this picture of birds just haphazardly digging around for seed. So nothing from philosophers like, look, this guy just kind of looking around everywhere for something.
No specific purpose, just kind of randomly bouncing around.
Yep. Yeah, so pretty good little
Greatest fish.
cut down right there, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like my Saturday mornings. Can't focus on any project.
Just all over the place.
No idea what you're talking about.
Sounds like my normal work day.
Especially if you're doing Starbucks.
Yeah, especially for Starbucks, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's see. And notice in 19, mine it said, and they took him and brought him. So that's kind of why it made some people think that it was more of a, you're on court, you're on trial here. 20, for you are bringing some strange things to our ears. We want to know what these mean. So why would it be strange to them? Surely the crucifixion, resurrection of Christ would have been made, the evening news. Surely they get Jerusalem news feed, a daily, text message or something. Would this be strange to them? I mean,
I wouldn't be a bit surprised, I don't know this for a fact, that there was different levels of, I'll use the word gossip. You have the poor farmer / shepherd gossip, and then you have your, working class, or maybe you're educated, maybe even your nobility type of level of gossip. Yeah, there's an interchange, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a level of people that knew the story of some guy hanging on the cross that caused a stir, but may not know the whole story. But then these are the philosophers that are above the fray of the common folks, and, you know, and I wouldn't be surprised if
They
that.
should be in the know.
Yeah, but not
I think
necessarily.
a lot of things
Trivia.
I think a lot of things like even Peter and them didn't understand, because these are some new revelations that Paul had gotten that the others hadn't gotten.
That's true.
And so the things he's sharing about, this is the creator of all these things, and you can have a relationship with him, I think was all fairly new to him, maybe. You know?
There was a synagogue, right, here, because that's where they were at. Wouldn't word at least of the synagogue and then to the people get spread out that way, or
Yeah, but synagogue is Jewish.
it was all Jewish? Well, mostly Jewish.
In other words, not necessarily racially Jewish, I'm talking about religiously Jewish.
Yeah, yeah.
And to them, Jesus was a blasphemous person, and I can see how they would want to
Squelch it.
squelch it.
This is also the intellectual center of the Greek world, and I kind of see these folks as those people now that are highly educated, that are so smart and they know so much that they just don't.
They don't learn anything.
Yeah, they know too much to be even relevant in the world, I guess.
Yeah.
So when something that is of a spiritual nature only comes and doesn't really require large intellectual reasoning behind it, it's just all faith. It's just something that's not even on their radar. It's like out of the realm of possibilities.
Don't absorb it at all. They don't.
Just why bother myself with that?
So is that something we ever do today?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We stay in our own little world, if you will, in our own bubble. Don't dare open up our mental capacity for other things. We know what we know.
Or particularly, Matt mentioned spiritual things.
Yeah, especially.
Spiritual.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that reminded me of 1 Corinthians 2:14. The natural person does not accept the things of the Spirit of God. They're folly to him, and he's not able to understand them because they're spiritually discerned.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. I still find it kind of strange. It's how many years after the resurrection are we in? What's the approximate timeline for this?
50, 60?
Oh, no, I
I
don't
was
think
thinking
it's that long.
30-ish.
I think
30 years?
Yeah, 20 to 30 years, I
I'm
think is
thinking
what.
30-ish, 35, I don't know why.
Yeah.
Let's go to the maps.
He's going to the map. I just, the reason why I asked that question is I would have thought over time, stories or myths or something would have oozed out into this
All right, so the second journey was 49 to 52 AD.
49 to 52.
Yeah.
Kind of split the difference there.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I meant, 50 AD.
Yeah, I knew that. I'm stupid. I knew that same thing.
Right, exactly.
I knew what you meant.
We are so roundabout. Plus or minus.
No question, Johnny.
I had read something this week that, and I don't know where they got this from or whatever, but that information had traveled at that time like 4 miles a day. So it would take information 4 miles in a day to get out. And the reason I was looking at that is after Jesus' resurrection, he tells them to meet him in Galilee, which is like 80 miles from Jerusalem. So, why would he have told them to meet him in Galilee? And because they would have been ahead of the information, getting to them at that point. So,
It's interesting.
Yeah.
so how, I don't know how far this is from Jerusalem, or what,
Pretty far.
It's pretty
I don't know if it would take that long year-wise, but
Plus you have the whole scenario, we call it Chinese whispers, where I say the elephant is purple, and then by the time it gets around y'all,
It's not
y'all
even an
is
elephant.
green or
Right,
whatever,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but I would be cautious about that. And I know that's our popular belief is that, but we've been trained out of the verbal way
Yeah.
of going. We have been trained into written.
yes.
It holds the truth, if you will. But even back then, verbal was primary and was very accurate of how they communicated. Most of the early Bible was verbal for the longest
Yeah.
time before it got there. But you would hear the stories of how they would have the kids do this over and over and over again. And if you read Genesis, you feel like, wait a minute, he just said that. Wait a minute, he just said that. He said that again. He said that again.
Right.
And these are stories that have been repeated and repeated to ensure accuracy with it. So I do know what you mean by that, because our society today, we butcher up
Right.
the vocal recall.
There's a scene in the Chosen where Jesus says, and I think it has to do with the I don't know, one of the conversations he's having, and the guy tells him his story, and Jesus says, and they make a comment, and Jesus says, well, that's what we Jews do, is we tell stories. And so it all had to do with, that's how their history gets passed down, is by telling of the stories and of the things that had happened to them, gets passed down from generation to generation to generation.
And so that's what was amazing to me, is that how could they possibly have not heard this other than by choice? By saying, I'm not going to associate with people that have these stories.
That's the bit, the association part.
The association part. I'm just not going to listen to that group of people that babble to their way of thinking. It's just babble to them. And so they isolate it out. Interesting. Okay. Let's see. We finished at 21, right? And now all the Athenians and the strangers visiting there were used to spending their time in nothing other than telling or hearing something new. Just what tickled their ears is what it was. Okay. 6 minutes. Okay. 22. And Paul stood in the midst of the Areopagus and said, Men of Athens, I observe that you are very religious in all respects. Do you get a feeling that that's Paul just buttering them up with that kind of a truthful false praise, if you will?
Mine says that they are too superstitious.
Really?
This is the King James. It says, I perceive that in all things ye are too superstitious.
Well, that changes it considerably. And where I was going anyway.
Or, you know, if you keep on, then he explains why he's setting it up this way.
Yeah. But I think what he's talking about is that, I don't know if, you mentioned the word spiritual. I don't know if they're, I even classify it as spiritual. But to me, spiritual means you're tied into God. I think they were searching for something to believe in. And they were searching for, they knew that there was something out there. This all couldn't have happened by accident. The Big Bang Theory, I know it wasn't there at the time, but was you can't just have atoms combine and cause something. So there was some supernatural person or thing. And so they were searching, but they just didn't have the right answer. And so I think being religious is not necessarily a bad thing, because you're open to it.
I mean, I think we're all religious. I think we're created religious. I think we're created with that understanding that there is something greater than us.
Right.
Right? Is that, you hear commentaries of preachers talk about that God-shaped hole that we have within us. And we're always seeking to fill that. And, so I think that's innate. I think that's the way that God created us, is that with that desire. And then we choose, though, to fill it with other things other than Him. And it's in that filling that makes us,
That's why
that
they have
makes
so many
us
idols, because
Yeah.
they're
searching for something
it's like,
to give their life
something
meaning.
yes.
Yeah.
I think so, too.
Well, the King James is really throwing me here. So, superstitious versus religious. I personally would have never have made those synonyms of each other's. I don't mean to spice sound. Sounds like it. How do you reconcile that
Well,
in the King James
what would Paul have thought? Paul would have thought those were superstitions.
Yeah.
right? Paul would
All
have
the
thought,
idols and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
right? Because in their superstitions and the fact that they're putting, they're giving power to something that's inanimate. So, so the reason that I can understand what Paul is saying in the King James, the way it's put in the King James, is because that's the way Paul would have expressed it, and
So why
So
do we
that's the
have
way
in
I
our,
see it.
our,
It's probably a case where most translations don't view the King James one being a good short.
yes, yeah.
And the Greek word is some, I don't know how you say it, dicemus or something, but it says
Fine,
it's a
John.
compound derivative of meaning, of more and religious, more religious. So I think it's probably just a case where the King James wasn't a real accurate or short, or at least not in our language.
Yeah, religious may just be a better word.
so I guess I should ask
That's what I'm
the
superstitious.
question in the room, what does religious mean?
Yeah.
What is?
Well, let me ask it another way, because I was just thinking of it the same way, same thing. If someone says, "Are you religious?" what would you answer?
No. I'd answer no,
Well, you would. But
because I'm just, part of that answer is because I think of religious as acts of things, duties, roles, things that I do. Yeah.
to me, it's contextual.
Okay.
Because if someone, and I can think of different examples of you're doing something and you're trying to talk about your belief in God, so they would say you're religious. They don't mean necessarily that you put on the robe and do but it's, do you have a relationship with God, or do you have faith? Whatever that God is. And I guess my point is, when someone asks me if I'm religious, I go to, when I think of it in a better sense as opposed to a sarcastic sense, that it's, I believe in God, I worship, I have a relationship with Christ, and I do things to want to serve Christ.
Right.
To me, that's religious. So it's all a personal definition
Yes.
of it, I guess the way, my point. But if you were, let's just say, Frank, you worship Baal, I don't know, pick another god, all right? You could say you're religious because you worship him, you follow him, you do stuff. But that's obviously completely different.
Yes.
So to me, religious just means that you're following your God actively, as opposed to a non-practicing, pick your pronoun.
Yep. I would agree. I'd agree with
That's just the way I've always taken religious, is do you do the things you're supposed to do in your,
It don't matter what denomination.
right.
That makes
And
sense.
it could be conflicting. Protestant versus Baptist versus, Presbyterian, as opposed to,
versus Satanist versus
right,
whatever, right?
right.
So religious being that your life is based on something other than yourself.
In the spiritual sense.
Yes.
Yes.
I think this though may answer the quandary right here. This commentary particularly drilled down on that Greek word, said it could have a positive meaning or a negative meaning.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it said, in light of the fact that it's in a laudatory introduction, or where the word was placed in this building up steam introduction, that it was probably intended to be the positive meaning.
Yes.
Instead of the negative meaning being superstitious, the positive meaning being devout or religious.
Yeah,
as in
exactly. It's
devout.
kind of the same, what I was referring to.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
anyway.
So he was trying to compliment
It's
it.
Greek to me. Yes.
He was complimenting it.
Gonna butter him up
Yeah.
before he tears him down.
That's what
And it's not
somebody said
necessarily
that
that
originally. right?
superstitious is a tear down word. Not necessarily.
No.
It could just be a descriptive.
Right, well, that's
Why
what,
do you
in the
think-
context of what,
Well, he's
what
saying,
Steve just,
he said it would be negative a word if it was used that way, or it could be a positive word, and
Yeah.
it's assumed to be positive here just based on where he used it and how he used it.
yeah.
And I don't know if I would call it necessarily buttering up. I know you've used it a couple times.
Yeah, I would just,
It's the introduction saying, I'm talking about religious things, spiritual things here, spiritual things here. And so, y'all are spiritual, i.e.,
Right.
what word do we use? So I don't think it's, in a way it's buttering up, but it's more of just saying, this is the category I'm talking about, and that leads because you have all these idols.
I've always thought Paul's setting them up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's setting up to knock them down.
It's the introductory arguments to his argument.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's, yeah.
So Luke records here that they are a bunch of philosophers.
Right.
So we have philosophy and then we have spirituality.
You know, we have another group here though too, Howard, where it talks about just the Athenians, which were just the common people from the town.
Right,
Right?
exactly, yeah.
And their culture, based on what 21 says, which is in parentheses for whatever reason, I don't know.
Mine too.
Says that, you know, that the Athenians and those that were just visiting they would just come their culture was they wanted to hear something new.
Yeah.
You know, they wanted to experience new things
Right.
and learn about new things.
Some lovers of innovation.
Yeah, yeah.
That was their version of going to the library to read. They didn't have.
I was thinking more like a sports game. That was their version of going to a sports and watching
Yeah,
watching them play. You know,
Yeah, kind of an experience.
But to learn something, not
But to-
just
right.
not just for gratification of
Yeah.
the gladiators.
Right, exactly.
One big debate club.
Yeah, the big club. Oh, shoot, I'm late, I'm stuck. So we'll get into 23 some more about the unknown God and stuff for next week. So you got to come back or else. I don't know what the else is, but you gotta come back. Any other comments before we?
I think that, that whole question about religious, you very quickly said, no, I'm not religious, because of the way you.
Because I'm trying to fight my culture
Yeah, no, I understand that.
of
No,
what
no,
it is today.
No, I understand.
We understand, but in some cases, I consider myself religious in a positive way.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think that's if you go to every person in this church, including the pastor, they're gonna say something different.
Yeah, that's true.
And
It's
it depends on
because-
how they take it.
Yeah, we have to be careful of when we ask that, if we ask that question
Right.
too, right? Because the answer that we get may not be the answer that we think we got.
Well, I usually, when I talk to people, I don't say, are you religious? I say, do you go to church or do you attend church?
Yes.
That's how
I
I
heard
skirt that.
one guy I heard, he said when he come to know the Lord, he lost his religion.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I can say, well, I went to church every week and for years, and then I got to know the Lord, so I was religious but lost. So you hear that term.
You also heard people say, I found religion.
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
right.
Really,
yeah,
I found God.
right.
So
It's how you use it.
it's how you use it.
Yeah. Where you coming from?
All right. Obviously, language was invented by man, not by God.
Yes.
We should be in Hebrew or something. All right, what are you guys praying for?